Well, hi there, it's Max here from Thinking Faith, and I'm really blessed to be able to bring you this short devotion where hopefully I can give you some insights on dealing with everyday life at what is certainly a difficult and an uncertain time. Marjorie Milne was an old mystic from Glastonbury in the United Kingdom. Not many people have heard of her, but she wrote some beautiful reflections and devotions. And in one of them, she has this astonishing and enchanting line where she says to God to make her a chalice of joy. She's writing to God and she says, "Make me, Lord, a chalice of joy." And a chalice, of course, is a cup or a goblet. And so we see the heart behind this, that we all want to be, no matter what we believe, I think, chalices of joy. The problem, of course, is that in the world today, there is very little joy, it seems, out there to fill our cups up with. There's very little joy out there to feed on. We see the struggles and the uncertainty that continue with COVID. We see war breaking out in Eastern Europe. We see the constant struggles of geopolitical tension, now combined with inflationary pressures and economic unrest and uncertainty. And as the economic and leadership theorists continue to tell us, the world is more VUCA than ever. VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And so in a world like this, how do we make ourselves and how do we live lives that reflect the truth that we are chalices of joy? Well, there are 2 points I want to share with you. The first is to focus on the eternal. And this is where the Christian message in the Bible really comes to life and is penetrating in its insight and is transforming in its prescription. In Paul's second letter to the Corinthian church, in 2 Corinthians in chapter 4, he very powerfully writes, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is eternal. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." And here we see a powerful insight from Paul. What he's saying is, in the midst of the uncertainty, the first thing we've got to do is focus on the eternal. When you focus on the temporary, it's easy to be discouraged. It's easy to become downtrodden. And after 2.5 years of a global pandemic combined with all of these other uncertainties, one of the words that keeps coming back that we see to describe the psychological, mental, economic, and financial impacts of all of these momentary troubles is the word languishing. And languishing has this connotation of just kind of dangling, struggling to make progress, the inability to succeed or to advance or to progress. And it seems like for some of us, we'd be forgiven for feeling like we are languishing. But Paul is saying in the midst of that, the reason you're languishing is because you're focusing on the temporary and the temporal. He says focus on the eternal. Focus on the unseen things. Focus on God. Focus on the beautiful promises of God. So that's the first thing, focus on the eternal. Secondly, live in the temporal. So while we focus on the eternal, we need to bring the eternal truths, the eternal ideals of God into our temporary lives. The world, interestingly, does the opposite. The world tries to eternalize the temporal. It looks at the things in the world, whether it's sex or money or war or injustice or power imbalances or inequality or pain or suffering, realities, yes, but it tries to make them ultimate things. It tries to eternalize the temporal. We are called to temporalize the eternal. But how do we do that? How do we bring heavenly joy into earthly suffering? How do we bring divine perfection into human imperfection? Well, we do it in and through the person of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ is the perfect example, the perfect embodiment and the perfect demonstration of the eternal becoming temporal, of heavenly joy coming down to deal with earthly suffering, of divine perfection coming down to meet with and live with human imperfection, of perfect heavenly love coming down to deal with broken earthly hatred. And so we see that it's only in and through Jesus that we can bring these two things together, that we can focus on the eternal but also live in the temporal. Because Jesus Christ, the eternal being, the Son of God, came to be temporary with us just for a time. He came and stepped into this world, God living with us. And that God continues to be with us if we want him to be through his Holy Spirit. He offers us that relationship. That's how we access the eternal. That's how we bring the eternal truths of peace and joy and hope and faith into our temporary lives and our temporary broken world. And when we look back at Marjorie Milne's poem, we see this playing out beautifully. I said that she called on God to make her a chalice of joy. But the lines preceding that is she says to God, make me thine so that I can be a chalice of joy. She understood that if she was going to be a chalice of joy, just like you and I are going to be chalices of joy, we first need to say to God, make me yours. We need to give ourselves to him. When Jesus Christ stepped into the world, died on that cross and rose for you, he made himself ours. The question for you and I now is, are we going to make ourselves his? In a world that's constantly uncertain, it's only in and through Jesus Christ that we can reasonably and compellingly keep our minds and hearts fixed on the eternal, but live joyfully as chalices of joy in the temporal. Thanks so much for listening, and God bless.